When it comes to the facts in this case, there is a lot of agreement. Where we diverge is where it comes to speculation about the alcohol consumption and the effect of that alcohol consumption. And where we diverge is the state's willingness to overlook some very obvious facts about what happened in this case and the cause of Officer Galinger's death. So the water is billowing out of a manhole cover on Hamill Road, and this is nothing new. On Hamill Road, that's just the way things go. In fact, you're going to learn that Hamill Road has been a recurring problem child for the city of Chattanooga. And I believe Mr. Williams alluded to this, that there have been multiple calls out there because, quite frankly, every time it rains hard, and you'll hear from the evidence that this day, the 23rd of February, 2019, was the rainiest day of one of the rainiest months on record in the Tennessee Valley. And water's billowing out of this manhole cover, and the Public Works gets a call, and what do? They come on out. Okay, now let me show you, if I may, Hamill Road. Now, as the judge said, you will see this portion of road. But what you'll notice is that there is a substantial curve here under a tree-lined area, and then the road straightens out. The accident happens approximately here. We'll have more detailed maps later on. What you'll learn is that this road, in addition to having water problems, has problems with the sides of it flaking off. In fact, the creek side here is constantly subject to falling off in the road. And Public Works is going out there to fix that portion of the road all the time. When it's rainy, as it was that night, and when it's dark, where is somebody going to travel on a road that dangerous coming through a wooded area? One of the other things you'll hear about Hamill Road is part of the problem is that once people get through this area that's tree-lined and flaking off, and where there's a close guardrail right here, then they tend to open up and drive pretty fast once they get to the straightaway. Because quite frankly, what happens is that once the road straightens out, then you have a straightaway with houses set back from the road at substantial distances, and people tend to drive pretty fast through that area. Public Works gets the call, and they come out. And they look at it. Do they fix the problem? No. Here's what they do. Public Works sticks a dinky, A-frame, weathered barricade over a manhole cover that's pumping out water with an inoperative light, and they leave it there. And Public Works goes on about its business for the day. Meanwhile, Janet Hinds is making plans with her daughter-in-law and her son and some friends to go see a band at a restaurant in Ringgold, Georgia, which is just across the border here, called Farm to Fork. And she's making these plans during that day, and she does head out to the restaurant about 6 p.m. She gets there close to 7, about 6:40, 7 p.m. And she goes inside the restaurant. Now, you saw pictures of her drinking, and boy, those look bad. But you're going to have the benefit of watching the entire 3.5 hours of her sitting in that restaurant, if I can call that a benefit. You're going to watch as she receives her first drink, which she gets sitting at the bar with her son and her daughter-in-law. And she offers to buy the drinks. Her son buys the drinks. And she buys a 22-ounce Blue Moon. Not a 20-ounce, a 22-ounce Blue Moon. Her son buys her that drink, and you will watch as she nurses that drink for the next over an hour. And she sits with that drink. Now, it looks bad when you show the photo of it. Doesn't look so bad when you watch it for an hour. Then she downshifts. So the state had said that she had a second Blue Moon. And I bring this up because it's important, because the alcohol quantities, the ABV of these beers are different. Blue Moon is a 5.2% ABV. And what she does then is she downshifts to Michelob Ultra, which is a 4.2 ABV. So a lower quantity of alcohol in that. And then for the next 2.5 hours, you'll watch as she gradually drinks a 16-ounce Michelob Ultra, another 16-ounce, and a 22-ounce Michelob Ultra. And she has one lemon drop shot. So I just wanted to correct that fact that she's not drinking Blue Moon the entire time. She's up, she's dancing, she's interacting with people. What you learn is that Janet Hinds, at that time, she's 57 now. So at that time, she's about 54, 55. She was a postmaster general for the Saudi post office, and she's a bit of a homebody. So she worked for the federal government. She goes out with her friends. On that night, they were going out to see a band, and I'm going to call it, subject to correction from the stand, a Allman Brothers cover band. But they go to see that band because her friends are in that band, and it's a popular group in this area. And you'll see people dancing, and you'll see people socializing, and you'll get the opportunity of watching her behavior that entire time. You'll be able to watch her get up from her chair. You'll be able to watch her go out and smoke, come back in, use the bathroom several times, moving about. She walks with a limp. You'll notice she walks with a limp because she's had foot surgery. And that's true from the time she arrives to the time she leaves. She walks in that same fashion. You'll see how she interacts with people at the bar. You'll hear from from her server that night, who will talk about her and her state during that time. You will hear from witnesses that were there with her that night, who are going to talk about how she was comporting herself during that time. When you hear about impairment, you will have to compare it by what you're witnessing with your own eyes of this person. So the night wraps up, the band finishes, Overland Express finishes, they do their final song, and Janet Hinds tabulates the check, adds it up, signs in her characteristic handwriting, and she leaves for the evening. Tips pretty well, too. She decides, well, she heads home at that point. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Officer Galinger and his FTO, his field training officer, are at the Amnicola station getting ready to begin their shift, and they just finished their briefing. And the function of a field training officer, as you will learn, is to train rookie officers in how to behave in the field. And you will learn that a field training officer volunteers for that position. If they meet certain qualifications, they get a little extra overtime to do this. But their responsibility primarily is to walk the field trainee through the 4 steps of progression before they can become an independent officer out in the field. And Officer Galinger, as the state called him a rookie, he was wet behind the ears. He was 6 weeks in the job. He was in phase 1. And in phase 1, your responsibilities are to watch and ask questions. Watch and ask questions. Be a very subsidiary part of understanding the dangers of police work and how to handle those and how to be situationally aware of what is going on. Officer Galinger and his field training officer drive to the scene. And they arrive at the scene of this barricade. And this was a photo that was taken just minutes before the accident. You saw what happened. Well, what did the state not note to you about what happened? Did you notice that when Officer Justice, the field training officer, pulled into the scene, he pulled into a driveway? We didn't see it on the video they showed you, but you'll see it. He pulled straight into a driveway. So his headlights are pointed away from the barrier. It's the driveway there on the right. What else did you notice? Did you notice that he turned on any blue lights? Did you see any blue lights? No, because there weren't any blue lights. You're going to learn that field training officer pulled into the driveway and did not illuminate the area at all. did not signal his blue lights. You're going to hear him say that he thought it would be distracting. You're going to be able to evaluate the credibility of that statement based on your own experience of what happens when you see blue lights. Do you get distracted or do you slow down? So, at that point, they get out of the vehicle and they go to inspect the manhole. Now, Field Training Officer Justice knows perfectly well that every officer is assigned a high visibility protective vest. But you're going to watch and you're going to see. Does the field training officer say to Officer Galinger, hey, you better put on your vest, we're going out in the road? No, he doesn't. Neither of them are wearing reflective vests. You know what they're wearing? Black from head to toe. A long black raincoat with no reflective gear on it. Black pants. A black shirt. You're going to hear Officer Galinger, you're going to hear Officer Justice explain, well, I thought we were just there for a few minutes. We only have to put on the reflective gear when we're directing traffic, da-da-da-da-da. The reflective gear you'll learn is about keeping people safe. And if you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation, as officers often have to do, they wear the reflective gear, or they should. But here's another player in this. The Chattanooga Police Department that is named in a lawsuit. The city of Chattanooga is named in a lawsuit now by Officer Galinger's family for $25 million because of the choices that Field Training Officer Justice made that night. Officer Galinger's own family is alleging that the city of Chattanooga was responsible for the death of their son and the choices that the field training officer made that night and the state of that road on that night. That's the deceased man's own family. No one is trying to beat up on the officer. But what you're going to learn is that when Officer Justice and Officer Galinger went and looked at that, Officer Justice started to walk back to the car because he figured, this is over, there is nothing we can do. And you're going to learn from his own mouth that Officer Galinger, for whatever reason, turned around and walked back into that road, wearing all black, no blue lights on, and leaned down behind that barricade to pick up the sign. At that time, Janet Hinds was coming out of the curve and opening onto that straightaway. Was she driving too fast for conditions? Well, you'll have to make that determination yourself. But she was driving, as you learned, consistent with the traffic on that road when people go into that straightaway. She comes out of that curve, and the officer in all black is leaning over and picking up that sign. And these two fates collide. You're going to learn that when the city of Chattanooga, when the Chattanooga Police Department investigates one of its own, they don't investigate it like they would when your average Joe gets hit by a car. They investigate it very differently. When they investigate the death of one of their own, where one of their own had also made a lot of mistakes that led to that death, and there is a $25 million lawsuit coming, they treat it pretty differently than they would if you or I got hit. Janet Hinds briefly stops the car that night, and then she takes off. You heard the prosecution say it was because of impairment. You're going to hear plenty of other reasons why a rational, reasonable person would leave that scene. Because at that time, you had Officer Galinger who was thrown through the air and landed on the road in a darker part of the road, still all in black. You had Officer Justice running towards him all in black with no flashlight. The blue lights still hadn't been turned on. And yet there was another car coming out of that curve and barreling down the road with its headlights coming. You're going to learn that when Janet Hinds got back to her house about 5 miles away. She contacted her daughter-in-law and said, hey, I'm going to need a ride tomorrow to our great-nephew's birthday party because I hit a sign and I busted my windscreen. You're going to hear testimony from Melissa Hinds, who is going to say that was the call and that her mother was calm, was relaxed, was irritated having hit a sign. You're going to hear from Melissa that she got off the phone and she Googled what happens when you hit a road sign. You'll see proof of her Google searches for road signs. She goes to bed. She thinks nothing of it. Next morning, she wakes up and she sees Facebook news. And this case is all over it. She calls her mother-in-law back and says, no, you didn't hit a sign. You hit a man. You hit an officer. No, that didn't happen. That's not even the right area. No, that didn't happen. Through the course of those conversations, then, it is determined that she probably did hit somebody and that she probably better go turn herself in. And so, it being a Sunday, they call Jerry Summers, who's probably the best-known lawyer in town. And it being a Sunday, guess who gets the call to come into the office and meet with Miss Hinds? That meeting takes place, and shortly after that meeting, this message is texted to Detective Lucas Fuller. Hey, Detective, it's Ben McGowan. Will you call me about Officer Galinger? We represent a woman named Janet Hinds. I'm sorry, at that point, spelled it wrong. Who may be involved. She wants to turn herself in. Can we meet you in the morning? Hey, Ben, Justin Kilgore is the lead investigator and is trying to call you. Okay, thanks. Just talk to Neil. What's the time on that? 3:56 p.m. So you're going to hear that there's no further communication about her turning herself in because there are no warrants at that point. And someone doesn't turn themselves in to the police until there are warrants, if they're listening to what their lawyer says. You're also going to learn that the police weren't particularly interested in her turning herself in. They were interested in making a big bust. Because remember, when the Chattanooga Police Department is investigating the death of one of their own, they don't treat it like they treat an investigation for the death of you or me. What happened is a horrible tragedy. And it is a tragedy that you will learn through the course of this case was brought about by a perfect storm of players here. The one thing it was not brought about, however, I submit to you, was any alleged impairment of the defendant or any willful choice to voluntarily leave that area knowing that somebody had been hurt and killed. So at the end of this trial, having heard all this proof, I'll be back before you and I have the opportunity to talk to you one last time. And I will ask you, not to do it for Janet Hinds, not to do it for me, to do it because that's what the evidence dictates. To find that the state hasn't proved that Janet Hinds is guilty of these crimes and that she is not the person to take the fall for the myriad errors that were committed by many, many players long before she came driving down that road that night. Thank you.
Members of the jury, it's time.